Hello, and welcome to the Scientista podcast, where women in science rule. I'm behavioral scientist Dr. Shata Chakraborty.
And I'm former Assistant Secretary of State Monica Medina. The Scientista podcast brings you conversations with leaders, changemakers, and cultural figures, sharing how they've turned facts and evidence into real world impact. And today we are thrilled to have with us as our guests Anne Drake and MarySue Barrett from the Women's Leadership Center at Williams Bay. Anne is also the founder and president of Lincoln Road Enterprises, a philanthropic organization advancing women's leadership in business, science, and technology. So, a true scientista herself. Anne and MarySue, welcome to Scientista.
Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We are so excited for this conversation. So, we always start out with our origin stories of our guests. And we're particularly interested in hearing about the Women's Leadership Center at Williams Bay because it's brand new. It's not even completed yet. And so we'd love to hear about both yourselves and how you have thought about the Women's Leadership Center and how you conceived of it.
I guess it starts where you can say that I've always been interested in women's leadership groups and women's leadership organizations. So I've always felt that women have a certain connection and a certain power and a certain way of doing things that really meshed with my style and that I think gets things accomplished. I also came from a male-dominated industry, so I saw the need for connecting women and for pulling women together because, again, there weren't that many around, and I felt like we could really magically create solutions. And so I founded a not-for-profit called Awesome, Achieving Women's Excellence in Supply Chain Operations Management Education, and
Love
really
it.
made an impact with that organization. So I felt like, okay, we've made some impact to help women leaders be better, to help them be better prepared, help them be better networked, to help them deal with issues, and so let's spread that to other fields. So that where the technology and engineering comes in, because I feel like technology and engineering is the backbone to everything, and certainly is the backbone to supply chain. And so that comes in there. And I've always felt that infrastructure and design are sort of how the world's designed, how it's put together, how the cities are planned, how the systems are planned, how the people system works. So that sort of is a huge part of what I see in the future and how women and men work together. And I've always been interested in women in business. So I've been in business circles forever. So I wouldn't leave them behind in wanting to make a great future world and figuring things out together. And lastly, um, astrophysics and space. I feel like if you're not paying attention to the space economy or the space future, or aren't somehow reading some of the research that's being done and making that into real products today, you're going to get left behind. So I don't want women getting left behind in that field. And I'd like to see more of them on the frontier of space and certainly on the makings of the materials, the processes, the thinking that will go into a future very unknown world. So take those all together and stir them all up in a big brew. And those are my main interests in women leaders in the future, bringing them together in those fields, bringing them to help solve world problems and figure out what those problems are.
MarySue, we would love your thoughts as well.
I'm delighted to join you. Have been very fortunate to work with Anne Drake several times. I'm told that I'm a super connector. I do that in the public policy space. So I've worked at the national level with groups like Brookings Institution, their Metro program, and I ran a civic organization in Chicago. Anne Drake was a valued board member. And now I have the good fortune of working with this new entity, the Women's Leadership Center at Williams Bay, on programming and partnerships. So we're excited to tell you more about those focus areas that Anne described and how we're starting to experiment with them and with partners as we prepare for opening our doors next year.
So, MarySue, you're being really modest. I got to jump in here and say MarySue's being very modest because I've known her for a long time and she's been a leader in civics and in Chicago for a while. I don't want to make it sound like you've been
Long
doing this
while.
forever, but MarySue, you are really a gem of a person who really has put policy at the heart of your career, whether it was in government or in NGOs and civic organizations. So hats off to you too, and your business career is so inspiring. So let's dive in.
So another Scientista, of course. This is why we created Scientista, and you described it so perfectly. It's so clear you have been a pioneering visionary in this space, and you've said for more than 30 years you've been motivated by seeing women's insight and drive go underutilized. I mean, we couldn't agree with you more there. Was some of that motivation a result of not having the kind of support system you needed when you were building your company?
Well, absolutely, because I experienced times in like sales industry meetings where I'd be chatting with a male colleague and they'd just sort of turn and go the other way. I ex-
And had that happen on the screen.
I experienced that once at a golf cart, believe it or not. I was at an industry golf outing. I was assigned to a golf cart, and I got in my golf cart where my name was, and this gentleman came along and looked at the names and looked at me and said, "Oh, uh, I must have the wrong cart," and
That is
left.
so infuriating.
Left. I mean, it was so funny. I was pretty hysterical because it was so funny. It was just so ridiculous,
He missed out.
And so he did miss out, and so they put me with the director of the program, who was a woman, and we had a great time in that golf cart. So he missed out. So certainly there were times where where I didn't have the networks it took, or I didn't have the systems that it took, or I didn't have the contacts that it took because I was a woman. Maybe made me try a little harder, and maybe made me retreat to my hotel room or whatever at a conference, probably more often than I would have liked. So you're absolutely right. We want to help women leaders in all these fields, which have tended to be male dominated, to to be able to do great things.
So that's exactly, I think, where we are coming from with this podcast, because women are often left out of the spotlight. They are a key ingredient to the success of so many things, but they tend to be more modest and they sit in the background and they don't really put attention on themselves. But what we love about the Women's Center and about your work already, before the center's even open, is that you are already spotlighting outstanding women who are making a real difference in lots of different fields. So tell us about how you're looking for and finding those voices, and what kinds of stories do you think are the ones we need to elevate?
Well, we look under every rock. Let's just start there. And somebody told me that my whole life I've interviewed everybody I met. And I do. I'm always looking for great ones.
We're
Okay.
in good company.
Yeah. So that's part of it. And both Mary Sue and I and the team are very active in people learning and new acquaintances and finding new contacts that we think can help make things better for the future. So, so it's sort of like we do that naturally, but now we're trying to do a better job of doing it also planfully. So we've taken some of those fields, which I mentioned to you before, and we're looking for key leaders in those fields by asking other people, who would they say is a key leader in this area? And we're creating, data of these names and people that we think are strong leaders in these particular fields. And then we're calling them together it's almost like a focus group dinner, and asking them, here's what we think the center is going to be all about. What do you think? What would you like to see? What would you like to have? What do you think will help women make a difference? So we're sort of prototyping now, ahead of when the building will be ready, what we see happening, and we think that's really important so that women know we know what we're doing. I mean, we don't want to just start on day one, the day we open the door. So having these prototypes, having these lists, actively seeking out contacts is part of that story.
It's amazing.
We have also loved profiling women that Anne has met along the way in business and the arts and science, all of it. Some of those are featured on the Lincoln Road website, and others, I want to brag a little bit. There's a new center under construction, and at a construction site, there's usually a boring fence. But on that fence, we decided to profile 18 women throughout history, some current, some long ago. And do you want to tell the story about your friend Katie?
Sure. So we said, let's find women for the last 400 years that have had breakthroughs in scientific studies that maybe no one even ever heard of. So we did some research on that. And then we said, who do we know today that we feel is the kind of woman that we all aspire to be and doing the kind of work that we aspire to make happen? So we created this fence on these giant, in fact, behind Mary Sue's head is a piece of one right now. And
Nice.
if you look at it,
Love
there it
it.
is. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So we created these
Amelia
giant,
Earhart.
posters that are plastic that are on our fence. And then we alternated. We alternated someone who's deceased that which people might not know with someone we did know, and they alternated them all around the fence. What's really fun about this is, and actually the one that is behind Mary Sue, which is sort of hard to see. Katie Coleman is an astronaut that is a friend of mine, and she was one of the people we featured on our fence. And she came to see the Women's Leadership Center a few weeks ago, and I've got the cutest pictures of her standing up there pointing, pointing to herself on the fence. And right next to her is Katherine Johnson. So she's pointing to Katherine Johnson too, who's one of
Hidden
the hidden
figures.
figures. Yeah.
Nice.
So there she is
Love it.
saying, look at me, look at, whatever. So it's been a lot of fun to sort of get energy
Yeah,
going.
That's
it
so creative. We love
love
that.
that. And I will say, thinking about these very non-traditional career fields like space, when I was at the State Department, we did in the bureau that I ran, we did space diplomacy. And we were so anxious to promote the Artemis program, which had at least been planned to have a woman be one of the first people to be um, going back to the moon, and looking for women in space careers all over the world. And, there are just a lot of women who are really excited about space. So it's great. It's not one that you think of when you think of women.
So, Anne, how did your personal experience shape this vision for Lincoln Road? And I'm asking that because Scientista came together. Monica and I were participating in the Kamala Harris campaign. And following her devastating loss, it was a realization we had that the woman who deserved the job didn't get the job. And now we're not a political organization, but it's such a stark example of the woman who deserved the role didn't achieve it. And so from that, we really turned that grief and that anger into Scientista. And so that's the kind of origin story behind this. I'm curious, what is the equivalent for Lincoln Road for you?
So the equivalent is two things. So one, about 18 years ago, I went to Bellagio, Italy, with a study group that Mary Sue was sponsoring to talk about the future of the country, and we were working on different projects that said, what do we need to be successful in 2050? So we went for a week, and we're very inspired by how much work we got done out in the garden, out in the yard, in our little study groups, studying this and studying that, and coming back together once or twice a day and syncing up and then going back out there and doing this work. So that was sort of the first, vision of the particular center that we're building. But the start probably goes way back to when I was in grade school or junior high school, because I was a classmate of Hillary Clinton's, and she and I went to the very lake in a conference center right down the lake road from where we are. And we went there and have fond memories of what that's all about, and of talking about the world and the future and what do we do about it at our, eighth grade in ninth grade and 10th grade level. But we both have memories of that. So she actually came to see our property in the last couple of years, and we're out there on the boat going, look, look, look. And you can see right where we used to go to camp. It's still there, by the way. Yeah. So that's part of the inspiration that we've had too. And again, talk about a woman who should have gotten a job.
Exactly. I was just gonna say that.
More, but so that's certainly proof of the inspiration that we've had from many many sources.
Yeah, it's just, I think it is a moment in time, especially now that it's happened so recently, that women's voices have been somehow, I think, pushed aside a little bit. And so career women's voices um, have been silenced in some way. And so it's great that you're spotlighting women, particularly that you're drawing the comparisons between historical figures and women who are breaking barriers today. And, I mean, there's so many fields where women are making a huge difference. We talk a lot about AI and how that's changing so much in the world. And I know, Mary Sue, that's a part of what you're working on now. And you've recently written a white paper on responsible AI uses. So talk about that and talk about how you hope the center can help shape some of the AI policy going forward, say on environment or on education. How can AI be a force for good in the world?
Absolutely. And, when we've done these focus groups, no surprise, sustainability comes up in every conversation and the explosion of artificial intelligence comes up. So that sort of naturally uh, intertwined into a topic that we thought was worth a bit of an exploration. As Anne describes this beautiful setting, which she's known since childhood, on Geneva Lake in southeastern Wisconsin, which is about an hour and a half from Chicago, but it's right in the heartland. It's easy to get to, but it's also away, similar to the Rockefeller location of Bellagio, where people go to have big breakthroughs. We want to create that for women. But as we've looked around, we have now found one place that's been designed by and for women. Our architect, Jeannie Gang, is doing extraordinary design. But we simultaneously, as this building is rising, have to think about what's going to occur there. So as a startup, we wanted to prototype because we didn't have our convening space yet, though we will a year from now. We decided to interview a number of women. So we consulted about 15 leading minds, and we were very pleasantly surprised that almost everyone we reached out to said, "Sure, I'll talk to you." I mean, we don't exist yet, but people want to help and they want to be part of solutions. So whether that was the woman who's in charge of the expansion of data centers for Microsoft, Noelle Walsh, or an entrepreneur named Julia Armstrong Diagnace, who's helped create a digital twin of the
Yes,
Earth. Her company's called Earth
such a great
Knowledge.
project.
Um, and leaders at Google have helped us understand Flood Hub, which is a tool for predicting river edge flooding. All of these things, whether it's wildfires in California, floods in Texas, concerns about the consumption of energy and water for data centers, we have to get beyond hand wringing and have to get towards how do we deploy tools, human driven, for good. And that's really our definition of responsible AI. So what we did was we interviewed these women individually, synthesized, and put out a report which had 6 recommendations that really any institution can take advantage of. But while it was helpful and we hope make it a contribution to this important topic, it also taught us that there's a hunger out there for women from disparate backgrounds to come together, to bring their expertise, and to create something stronger together. And that's what we'll be doing.
That's awesome. I love that all of this is data driven. It's evidence based, and you're really taking the time to do the research, and because that's what scientists is all about, right? Decisions that are entrenched in evidence. And so from this paper, you've also identified 6 recommendations for action that every organization can implement. Which stand out to you as the most urgent or impactful that we can do really right now?
Well, I've learned from Anne Drake as a woman who was a CEO that it all starts with strategy. So that was, one of our grounding recommendations. But I want to pluck out 2 elements that maybe are not as obvious. When you think about deploying technology investments and upgrades for good and not sidelining your sustainability goals, whether you're a university or a corporation or any institution, you have to think about your whole ecosystem. And so one of our recommendations is to activate your supplier base and hold them to the same standards as you are adopting yourself. So those targets achieved with your, usually the spend of a corporation is actually larger through its third-party relationships. McDonald's is famous for activating its supplier network to achieve goals. They move markets. Every company can do that. So activating your supplier base is one. And then the importance of cross-industry networks. I think particularly in this environment where we're so polarized politically, obviously we believe women can be an antidote to that, to come together. But cross-industry networks are really valuable, that you can't sort of sit on the sidelines and say, someone else has got to figure out the rules of the road here. Someone else has got to figure out um, the guardrails. You have to engage with your peers to advocate, whether that be through international entities or domestic entities, to say, we want responsible AI and this is what it looks like.
It's so exciting and so pragmatic. I think women are, and you hinted at this earlier when you talked about your own start, about being pragmatic and looking for solutions that made sense, designing well. These are things that women, I think, do, just because they're so accustomed to having to juggle or problem solve in the world in a way that, is unique to women, I think. So tell us a little bit about what kinds of women you hope will come to Lincoln Road. How can scientistas connect with you? How can we as an organization support what you're doing? We're really excited by it, and we want to be as helpful as we can be, and be that collaborative space as well.
Well, it's wonderful. We take all the help we can get, of course. And I think, first of all, it's finding these women. It's finding them. So we're in the finding them stage. But one leads to another, and so if you're now more aware of what we're looking for, then that will help you assist us in finding women who might be interested in doing something, or in at least being interviewed or collaborating with a group. So finding them is really the first thing. And then organizations. We're also looking for organizations in these spaces, that women's organizations. So we see us really working on much of our programming with an organization rather than with individuals. And we're not going to compete with leadership development at colleges or whatever. We want to be beyond that, and really working on the convening side of great leadership. Not that leadership development isn't a part of almost everything forever. I get that. And we'd like to assume that our people who come to our center will leave with their own personal mini transformation, or even a major transformation. We take that too. But starting with women that we're profiling and looking for in these fields, and then um, organizations that we might be able to partner with who might want to work together on something. And then, ideas, what are some really important ideas going on in the world now, or should be going on, that we can convene groups to discuss. And we intend to write a mini paper after every single conference or group meeting that we have, to let people know that we're doing things and the kind of people that we're working with, and to give them just a top line summary of what was worked on, and perhaps what was decided, or what's going to move forward, such as the recommendations that we did in our paper. So those three areas are probably the three main places where we're going to be looking for help that could be provided with you all and the women that
And are
you
you
meet
thinking
and talk to.
just US based, or are you thinking even bigger than that? I mean, obviously space is out there. It's definitely big, but I'm wondering if you're just really focusing on US leaders, or are you looking globally? Because
Well, of course, globally, but to me, first things first. So we're trying to make a concentration that's not too far away geographically to get going. But absolutely, we're interested in other countries, and we've made sure that the technology capabilities of the center will be great for having discussions with people in other places. So, but yes, we'd like to think that we'll be a global organization. But so far we're prototyping and writing, and so we want to figure out how to get started, which is what we're thinking would be mostly U.S. people that we'd be
Sure.
looking for.
And
But
just to probe a bit, what is success then? What's it going to look like when
woof,
this is all
yeah,
this is all up and running
yeah,
and achieving all the goals that
yeah.
you've set out?
Well, I would say that success is convenings of incredible, accomplished women in groups of 20 to 80. And then we have a different methodology for going to 130, to study, discuss, talk about, find solutions to mini problems, mega problems, all kinds of things that will be written about in a small way, and that we can pass on to other women leaders. And we assume we'll be open mainly 5 days a week, not weekends. On weekends, we're going to do architecture tours, a different thing. But during the week, we'll be looking for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, sometimes 4.5 day kinds of meetings. And we intend to really facilitate what happens, partner with the folks who come here, write some programs if we need to, let them write the program if they want to, in order to be a place that really accelerates great thinking, great ideas from women leaders in these broad array of
Wonderful.
fields.
And we're starting now, as you can hear, we are starting now. So we've mentioned two organizations. There's the overarching Lincoln Road website, which is lincoln-road.com. And there's also a website, womensleadershipcenter.org. And both are a place that you can find out more information. We're going to be ramping that up. We're excited to get ideas from your listeners and from other organizations about the three things that Ann mentioned: people and organizations and ideas. But we're starting to lay the groundwork for those breakthroughs, whether they be global or local, right now.
All of the above. Okay,
Yes.
so final question for each of you that we like to ask our guests on these episodes is, we didn't get here overnight. There's been curveballs thrown our way through our entire careers and many more to come, most likely. So, Anne, what's an example of a curveball that came your way? And we heard your golf cart story, so you can't use that one again.
Okay.
But something that potentially would have been a barrier to move forward, but you were able to learn from it and ultimately succeed because of it.
Mm. Well, I almost feel like most key things that happened to me in my life came at me, and then I had to transform what that meant to both me and to it. I mean, when you think about it, also opportunities come at you, and if you're not alert to that, so I would say facing whatever it is, I'm assuming you mean a negative thing. So facing whatever it is that had occurred and wrestling with it and saying, okay, I can be sad and unhappy for about 12 hours, but after that, I got to put one foot in front of the other and march and do something about what's bothering me or what the issue is. And I've sort of applied that model to everything that happens to me. It's like you go into mourning for just a little bit, but then you need to come out, and it can't last more than a
Can't
day.
wallow.
Yeah, so put those feet forward and just figure
How
out what you
about
can
you,
do
Mary
about it.
Sue? What life curveballs have you dealt with, and what
Hmm.
did you learn from that?
Many. But as you mentioned, Monica, I had a bit of my career early on where I worked in the public sector. I worked for a new mayor of Chicago, Richard M. Daley. And I started in that office when I was 24. He did not have any hesitations about hiring young people or putting women in positions of power. It was a very encouraging environment. But I was hungry, and I was eager to advance and take on more responsibility. And one of the senior people in the office went to join the then Clinton administration. And that person was chief of policy. And I had been working with the mayor on some intense projects. And I went into him, I said, I'd like to be considered. And he named me chief of policy at age 27. Um, and I tell my kids who are in their mid-20s, sometimes one of our family mantras is ask for what you need. But I've actually tried to practice it because it's scary. And you can psych yourself out. You can say, I'm working with people who are twice my age. They know so much more. True, true, true. But there's also a lot of people who are willing to help teach you. And that's something I continue to get to do today with the Women's Leadership Center, is work alongside really smart women and learn every day. And
I love that.
it's great. And we're excited to
I love that
ripple
because
out
I
into the
do
world.
think this is a time for that next generation to come forward and not to be afraid and not to worry about whether they're ready or old enough. And I kind of watching he's not a she, the candidate in New York for mayor who's so young. It just makes you think. And a lot of my friends from the the Biden administration are running for office now, and they're very young, and I do feel like, you know, take that moment. Even if you feel like you're young and you're not ready, you probably are ready. And that's great advice. And if you're not, you'll get there.
So don't wallow and ask for what you need.
That's right. Yeah.
Those are the two pieces.
Right. And I always say what on top of that for both MarySue and I is, just say yes.
Yes.
To opportunities. Just say
Yes.
yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We tend to be resourceful. We tend to figure it out, don't we? Well, okay, Anne, MarySue, thank you so much. Your work is incredible and it's doing so much to uplift women. It's a pleasure to know you and to collaborate with you in the future. We're very excited. Thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast. And to those of you who've listened in, if you've enjoyed this episode, help others discover it by leaving us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and tell a friend.
You can always find us at scientista.world for more stories, updates, and ways to get involved. And please do check out the Lincoln Road websites that MarySue mentioned. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.